Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start off with a question. By show of hands, how many of you own Bitcoin or some other crypto asset? Oh, good. Now I see some hands of who I know bought some drugs online. I'm just joking. I'm gonna explain why you shouldn't do that later in the talk. But my name is Charles Hwang, and it is a privilege for me to be here today to explain what Bitcoin is. I want to just thank the Bernstein family for inviting me here today. It is really an honor to be here. I taught an MBA course on crypto and blockchain for over 7 years, and it was a weekly 3-hour course for 12 sessions, and we barely scratched the surface of this technology. And today, I got 10 minutes with you, and I'm going to explain everything you need to know. So let me start by telling you a story. In Afghanistan, it is very difficult for women who are not married or widowed and raising a family to get a job and to also open up a bank account. So many nonprofits were trying to solve this problem. And so many of them started to teach women technology skills, such as coding. And many women in Afghanistan started to learn how to code online. Now, then became a second problem. How do you pay someone in Afghanistan? If you are a US-based company hiring someone in Afghanistan to code for you, you can't send any money over there because of US sanctions. And so someone in 2013 found a solution to this problem, and that was Bitcoin. Anyone can open up a Bitcoin wallet. You could pay someone in Bitcoin, and they started paying these single women in Bitcoin. And so they were able to spend in Bitcoin, pay for shelter and food and education for their kids. And they had no other choice but to save in Bitcoin. And now think about it. In 2013, if you remember the price of Bitcoin, it's around $60. Now let's fast forward to 2021. In 2021, we withdrew our troops from Afghanistan, and the Taliban came in and took over the country. Many of these women realized how bad that is under the new, under Taliban rule, and so they decided to flee as refugees. And when they fled as refugees, guess what they had with them? Bitcoin. And many stories, if you look at this, and there's stories reported about this, they went to their new country with 1 to 2 Bitcoin. Now, if everyone knows the price of Bitcoin today, that's equivalent to $100,000 to $200,000. When have we heard a story of a refugee coming to a new country with any money? You're lucky if you have $50 or $100 to your name. And so this is a really compelling case. Now, it may be a little difficult for some of us to relate to this story because we are so far removed from it. I assume everyone here has access to the US dollar. It's the global currency of the world. And so we are very lucky. Even in this country, we went through a banking crisis, and yet we still trust our banks. We keep our money there. And how many people in other countries don't trust their local currency? It's highly inflationary. You don't trust the government that's managing it. And you also don't trust the banking system. We tend to forget, especially for Americans that live here, that there are countries that will seize your bank account, will seize your funds for any reason. And the other piece of that is sending money overseas. That's why I really believe the developing world understands Bitcoin better than a lot of Americans do. Now, let me tell you a little story about myself. My parents fled communist China to come to New York, where they got married. They arrived here with very little money and were able to provide a very good middle-class lifestyle. And one of the things when I look back is, if you look back in 1971, President Nixon took the US off the gold standard. This is a pivotal moment for the United States because this is when we start seeing monetary inflation. As I mentioned, in the beginning, it was a good middle-class lifestyle where my dad worked as a waiter And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was able to support us in a very good lifestyle then. But then my dad had some addiction problems, and eventually we lost everything. My parents got divorced. We had to start all over. And my mom, I grew up in an inner city school system in New York City. And when we did that, I remember my mom working really hard to try to save money to invest in a real asset such as real estate. But she could never save enough because the inflation of the real estate kept going higher, and she could never get enough for the down payment. It made me think for a minute that maybe if she had back then a way to save in Bitcoin, that would be a better way. Now, some of you are probably thinking, that sounds crazy. I would never save in Bitcoin. But let's take a step back, because a lot of us think about Bitcoin as, hey, how much is Bitcoin today? How much was it last week? How much was it 6 months ago? But let's zoom back even more. If I had $100 in 2012 and I bought Bitcoin, that would be worth $1.5 million today. That's the basket of goods. If I had $100 in 2012 and I kept it in US dollars, I would have $73 worth of buying power. So when people tell me that the dollar is a better storage of value, I question the logic. Because in the end, we have to zoom out more, because this is a new technology and we have to focus less on price, but what it can do. And so I want you to really think about that. Now, some of you might be unimpressed with these two stories because you believe that this is used for illicit transactions, as I joked earlier. But let me tell you something about Bitcoin and a lot of other crypto assets. It's highly traceable. When I taught my MBA class, I showed every student how you could trace a Bitcoin transaction on the blockchain. So a student came up to me and asked me, wait, what happens if I bought some drugs online with Bitcoin? And I told him, law enforcement can find you. And he stared at me with really wide eyes, a little scared about what I just told him. But it is true. Our law enforcement in the US have figured out how to trace Bitcoin transactions. The FBI, the Department of Justice, has been using the Bitcoin blockchain as evidence in a court of law when they have caught online drug dealers, child pornographers online, and a lot of these websites have been shut down. And so what criminals have discovered, cold hard cash is the most anonymous way to conduct illicit transactions. It is not Bitcoin. Let me end my talk with an analogy. If you remember in 2005, the iPhone was just created. I had a StarTech flip phone still, and I remember my friends telling me the iPhone. And if you remember in 2005, the BlackBerry was actually the most popular phone around. But I had friends who are big Apple fans. They told me how great this phone is. And I could spend 10 minutes in 2005 telling an audience full of people like yourselves how great the iPhone is, how great the new camera is, the apps on the phone. This phone is more powerful than some of your laptop. And you might come away with it unimpressed. Ultimately, you need to get the iPhone. You need to use it. You need to understand why this is powerful. And so this is my recommendation to all of you. If you're still unimpressed with Bitcoin, go buy $5 of it. They use the term Satoshis for that small amount. But you could buy $5 of Bitcoin, send it to your friend, track it on the blockchain, find something to buy with Bitcoin. And I've been buying Bitcoin art online with it. You can even go and send it to a friend internationally and notice how if you send money internationally, they will receive it in less than 10 minutes, faster than any other international wire. And you really have to test it out. And when you test it out, I think you're going to be amazed by what this technology can do. And when you discover that, that's when I think you'll realize how much this technology can change our world for the better and why I'm so passionate about this. I really thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions, I'll be around and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much for your time.